In this video, I'm going to introduce Swift Cloud, which is an open source infrastructure as code framework for Swift developers. So you can see here a little bit of a preview of what it can actually do. If you go to swift.cloud, you can go through this, click try the SDK. Of course, the SDK is on GitHub, but in this video, we're just going to do a full run through of how it works. So what I want to do is deploy a Hummingbird server to AWS. And let's just click get started. And we're just going to follow their instructions for a new project, which involves cloning this template. And then we'll call their configure script. And let's just do Hummingbird demo. This all looks good. We are going to be using Visual Studio Code today. Okay, amazing. Let's cd into the directory and just call Swift run. Great, and we are up and running. So we can go ahead and curl this. So if we curl localhost 8080, you'll see we get back hello, and you could see the logs coming through. So it looks like we are good to go there. So now let's jump over to VS Code, and I'll open up Hummingbird demo. Okay, great. And I'll open up the package.swift file. So you can see we're using the latest version of Swift. There's some initial things that they give you in here, like a Docker file, but we're going to basically ignore all that for now. And our goal here is to just to deploy this directly to AWS. So we're going to add a new package, and this is the Swift Cloud package. And for now, I'm just going to get this directly from the main branch and click Save. You can see VS Code is going to go fetch that package for us. And while it's doing that, so the goal here is because this is an infrastructure as code framework, what we want to do is actually define our infrastructure in Swift code, and we're going to do it right alongside our application. So let's go ahead and create a new target, and I'm just going to call this infra. And the only package it actually, or the only dependency it actually needs is the cloud dependency from Swift Cloud. And we'll say that this is in the sources infra directory. So let me click save. It's probably going to complain because I don't have any folders. So let's go ahead and just create that folder here, call it infra. And then I'm going to define a project.swift file. So very similar to the way you have a package.swift file, we took a similar approach where you're going to define a project.swift file. Technically, it could be called anything, but I think project makes the most sense here. And let's just go ahead and import cloud. And let's do a quick Swift build, just make sure we're in a healthy state here. Excellent. So we're in a good state. And now what we can do is actually start to define our infrastructure. And I'll show you what that looks like. So we're going to declare this as our main target. And we'll just say my project. And this is going to conform to the AWS project protocol. And we'll get into exactly what this protocol does, but for now, let's just take a look at the only required method, which is called build. And let me just get my syntax highlighting here. There we go. So there's one required method. This is called build, and it returns this thing called an output. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to return an empty dictionary for now, and we'll come back to that. But the thing that we want to build is our Hummingbird server. So let's declare a server. And this is an AWS web server. And let's just call it, yeah, Hummingbird, can't type, Hummingbird server. And there's a couple properties here that we can configure. But the most important one is we need to tell Swift Cloud which target we're actually building. So if we go back to our package.swift, you can see our server is under the app target. And so we can just put in app here. And then for our outputs, these are the things that we want to actually display when we deploy. So an obvious thing is let's actually display the URL. Okay, great. And technically, this is all we need to do to actually define our infrastructure. There's a lot more things you can configure, things like auto scaling, CPU, memory size, a whole bunch of other stuff. But my goal here is to just keep it incredibly simple. And now the next piece is we need to log into AWS, right? Like at this point, we haven't actually configured any credentials. There's nothing to talk to AWS, and there's a lot of ways that you can do this. You could use the AWS CLI and do an AWS SSO login. You could basically follow their instructions for all the different ways to actually log in. But I'm going to show you the simplest way just to really make the point. We're going to create a .env file. And let's jump over to the AWS console. And we're going to go to under the IAM section. So you can click IAM, which is basically all of our credential management. And let's click users. And I'm going to create a new user, Swift Cloud Demo, and click next. And I'm going to break the rules a little bit here. And we're just going to give this administrator access. Of course, we could lock this down to just the services we need. But for the sake of this demo, this is a little bit faster. Okay, we've created this user, and now we want to create our credentials. So let's go ahead and create some access keys. Um, I'm going to show you the access keys here. I can assure you by the time this video goes live, these access keys will no longer work. But let's go ahead and copy the access key, and let's do AWS access key ID and paste this in. And then let's go ahead and copy the secret key, and let's paste this in. And this goes under the secret access key. Okay, great. So now we have our credentials set up, and back in our project.swift file, we are going to deploy this, and we can do this in one command. So we're going to call Swift run infra. So infra being, the target name that we put this in, and we're just going to call the deploy subcommand. And then I'm going to pass in this parameter called stage, which we'll talk about in a bit. But for now, let's just call it prod or production, and I'm going to go ahead and click enter. And now what is going to happen here is going to build our project. And you can see that we're actually starting up Swift Cloud and we're building our target. So this is building for Ubuntu and it's following all the best practices to do so. And then once this build actually completes, you're going to see that it's going to start to deploy it to AWS. Great, the build is complete. Does a quick install of Swift Cloud, and now you can see that we're actually starting to deploy our changes. There's a lot happening here behind the scenes. I'm not going to get into too much of what's going on. Really, the beauty of this framework is you don't have to understand all these things like policies and security groups and VPCs. All these things are handled for you. Um, the web server construct here is probably one of the more complex constructs. There's certainly simpler ones, but I think just with the popularity of Hummingbird and Vapor, I wanted to start by actually showing this one off, um, just because I think it's extremely complex and Swift Cloud makes it very easy, and then we can really expand on this later. All right, now you can see here it deployed our server, and you can see the URL that it spits out here is where the server is actually deployed to. So let's go ahead and copy this. We'll drop it in our web browser, and look at that. You get back hello, so we can see that this is actually deployed. And if we were to actually go into AWS behind the scenes, just to get into some of the details, so this deployed to the Elastic Container Service, and we could see here that we have a cluster up and running. I have another demo cluster that I was working on, but yeah, if we go into here and we click tasks, you can see that we have our task here. And if you were to look at the logs, you can see all of the Hummingbird request logs. But obviously, one big downside here is who wants to send around a URL that looks like this? And it's HTTP nonetheless. All the big services these days are making it very easy to do HTTPS and, of course, custom domains. And Swift Cloud goes way out of its way to do the same. So, what we're going to do is we are actually going to hook up Cloudflare with a custom domain in front of this server. And in Swift Cloud, this is incredibly easy. We just specify the domain name, and we can say that our host name is Hummingbird Demo, and I have a domain on Cloudflare that I'm going to use, swiftcloud.dev. And then you just have to specify who the actual DNS provider is. So we support a few different DNS providers, but for now, we're going to use Cloudflare. And the way Cloudflare works is you specify your zone name, which is basically the top level zone. So we have swiftcloud.dev. I'll click save and we'll just do a quick Swift build. Great. And so this all looks good. But same deal as AWS, we do need to connect to Cloudflare somehow. So let's pop back over and go to the Cloudflare console. And you're going to scroll down to manage account and go to account API tokens. Let's create a new token. And we are going to do the edit zone DNS template. And let's see. So include, I just want all zones for my account. And I give it a name. No, let's go to summary, create token. Great. And I'm going to copy this and let's go back. And very similarly, we can set the Cloudflare API token. Great. And now let's just call Swift run infra deploy again. So it should build our app much faster this time because this is second deploy. And also the deploy to ECS should also be much faster this time. And look at that. So we're done. And notice that the URL that's spit out now is HTTPS, and it's our custom domain that we specified. So if we copy this, and let's go back to the browser, and you can see here now we are on the custom domain. You can see it says hello, and we've officially deployed across cloud providers, which is really really neat. So this really shows you the power of Swift Cloud. But I want to take it one step further. I showed you that I was deploying this stage variable prod. And the idea is you can deploy many instances of your app. So if this is your production app, you could also deploy a development version of your app, or you could deploy a version for every branch that you push up to GitHub. And the beauty of this is you can use these stages because this is a real Swift program. You can actually use these stages in your infrastructure. So we have this thing called context is production. And so if it's production, let's say we want to use this domain, but if it's not production, then let's go ahead and use a different domain. And actually, let's take it one step further. Let's actually drop the stage name in here. And so now we can basically have a custom domain for every single stage, and it will correctly deploy to, the production version of your web server, or the non-production version. And so this is really where Swift Cloud becomes an incredibly powerful tool. There's a lot more you can do here. It's just as easy to deploy a Lambda function. So we can say let function equals aws.function. You give it some name, um, lambda function or something like, job processor. Maybe you want to process background jobs. And once again, you just have to give it the target name that you want to build. So you could very easily just go define in your package.swift a new target. You can call it jobs. You add the AWS Lambda package, and then this will go ahead and deploy this for you. Right. So if this target name was jobs, and now the really interesting thing here is you can actually give permission for this server to call this function. And this is incredibly easy with just calling server.link. And behind the scenes, what this is going to do is this is going to create all the necessary permissions to give your web server access to this function. So you're not passing around API keys or special tokens or anything like that. Swift Cloud is just managing all of that complexity for you. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed the demo. Really looking forward to people trying this out and giving me feedback. Like I said, it's fully open source. Um, and yeah, you can try it today. Thanks so much.